Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of The Story of Maple. Today's chapter will be Part 1, Chapter 2, The Fall of Sharenian. I'll be leaving out the author's notes, just for convenience. If you wish to read them, you may go to the website itself in the description. In the era of the Transcendence, many different species and civilizations began to thrive on Maple World. On the largest continent of Assyria was the Kingdom of Sharenian, one of the oldest civilizations in Maple World. Sharenian was built amidst lush vegetation, and its knights were famous throughout Maple World for hunting devils. Sharenian was ruled by King Sharen III, with his bastard son, Prince Sharen IV, next in line to succeed him. King Sharen suffered from madness and soon came to suspect that his son was trying to overthrow him. He summoned Guard Captain Khalad, the prince's teacher in combat, and ordered him to kill Prince Sharen, but Khalad refused and attempted to convince the king to see reason. Furious, King Sharen branded Khalad a traitor and attempted to have him executed. However, Prince Sharen was able to convince his father to merely have Khalad dismissed from the court. Though Khalad's life was saved, he was demoted to commander and was ordered to lead the Sharenian Defense Unit, a squad of knights who had been rejected from becoming official Sharenian knights. The Sharenian Defense Unit was then forced to go on menial missions rather than hunting devils. They were frequently sent on missions to hunt small moles that were pestering the local farmers, causing them to be known as the Mole Slayers. One day, Commander Khalad was leading his unit, composed of Hardin, Ayn, Ryan, Keeg, and Ed, on a mission to hunt moles when a Sharenian knight arrived and cryptically told Khalad that someone from the palace was waiting for him. As he returned to the palace, Khalad recalled how he used to instruct the prince in the art of battle, and how they would often gaze out upon the kingdom at sunset to take in its beauty, though it had often scared Khalad, since he knew that all things of beauty would one day fade, including Sharenian itself. Just then, he reached the kingdom outskirts and encountered the prince, who greeted his old teacher and told him that he still recalled Khalad's words about fading beauty. Khalad told him that he was surprised that Sharen had come to see him against the wishes of his father, to which the prince told him that he was only an apprentice coming to see his master. When Khalad asked if there was trouble at the palace, Prince Sharen told him that his father had lost his mind as he had grown obsessed with the Rubian, a gem said to cure any ailment and even revive the dead. The prince told Khalad that the king had spent years scouring the country for it while researching dark sorceries to help him in his quest. Recently, the king had even gone so far as to summon a devil to the castle. Khalad told Sharen that the king wouldn't succeed, to which the prince agreed, though he added that he couldn't stand by and watch his father's descent into madness. He then revealed that he was planning to usurp his father's throne in order to stop Sharenian from falling to ruin. He promised to come see Khalad again after he succeeded and hoped that Khalad would agree to serve as his knight when the time came. After Khalad returned back, his squad told him that they had seen him speaking with the prince and agreed to help them avert the great peril that Sharenian faced, though Khalad reassured them that nothing would happen. A few days later, Prince Sharen successfully executed his coup against his father, who shouted that he knew that the prince had been plotting against him. In his madness, he ordered Guard Captain Khalad to appear at his side, forgetting that he had dismissed Khalad from his court. The prince ordered his knights to arrest his father and find the Rubian. The king declared that he wouldn't allow Prince Sharen to steal the throne or the Rubian and summoned the devil Urgoth Dunamis to protect him. However, Urgoth coveted the power of the Rubian for himself and turned on the king. Meanwhile, the Sharenian Defense Unit watched the battle in the palace from a distance, frustrated that they were forced to remain on standby. Just then, their squadmate, Keeg, arrived from the palace and reported that all the members of the armed forces had been ordered to assemble at the palace as the king had been killed. Upon arriving at the palace, they were shocked to find the guards dead, with one fleeing knight warning him to get far away. He had told them that King Sharen had summoned a devil, which had resulted in the death of the king, and possibly the prince as well, who had gone missing. Kalad's knights agreed that they needed to find Prince Sharen. He would be leading his knights to their deaths for nothing if the prince had already been killed. As Kalad's mind began spinning, his knights reassured them that they were up to the task. His resolve bolstered, Kalad ordered his knights to split up in order to search for the prince. The knights fought through the devils that had invaded the palace and attempted to rescue any survivors. As Keeg fought methodically, Ed jokingly asked if he was an arcane construct, an automaton the palace sorcerers had rumored to have built. Keeg ignored the question and asked Kalad whether their priority was to kill the devil or save the prince. Kalad told him that it was neither and reminded his knights that their mission as Sharenian knights was to protect the people of the kingdom. They then entered the throne room, where they found Urgoth sitting on the throne with a mortally wounded Prince Sharen collapsed on the ground. Kalad and the knights engaged Urgoth in battle, but nearly all of them were killed. Kalad held a dying Sharen in his arms, who begged Kalad to uphold his promise to protect Sharenian before giving him the Rubian. Urgoth then cursed the knights into reliving the fall of Sharenian for all eternity, forcing them to uphold their pledge to guard the kingdom forever. To everyone's surprise, the entire squad was revived and sent back in time to when they had first entered the palace. Kalad reminded them that their mission was to protect the people of Sharenian by killing Urgoth before he cursed them again. They once again split up and fought past the devil invaders. Kalad, recalling Urgoth's curse and Sharen's dying wish, began to believe that defending the kingdom forever was all that he wanted. They entered the throne room once again and managed to defeat Urgoth, though they were unable to save Prince Sharen, who once again begged Kalad to uphold his prince before giving him the Rubian and dying. Urgoth then cursed the knights once again, forcing them back in time. Kalad and his knights made a slew of attempts and tried many strategies to defeat Urgoth. However, they soon came to realize several things. First, they had to accept that Prince Sharen was beyond saving, no matter how quickly they arrived. Second, defeating Urgoth even before he cursed them wouldn't break the time loop. Finally, the longer it took them to reach Urgoth, the stronger he became. They eventually found the body of King Sharen and learned Urgoth's name from the book he had been clutching. Sine also learned that Urgoth's true body was in the other world, and that the Urgoth whom they were facing was a duplicate formed in their world, with the original body in the other world transferring its strength to the duplicate in somewhere between 12 to 24 hours, which was how he grew stronger, the longer it took for the knights to reach him. Hardin asked why their fatigue hadn't been reset at the beginning of each time loop, to which Ein explained that their physical fatigue was reset, but their mental fatigue still remained. The knights then continued through the time loop, each time defeating Urgoth and watching the prince die before going back to the beginning. On the 22nd day, Kalad asked Ein how far such a curse would extend, given that a devil of such power as Urgoth had cast it. He clarified his meaning and asked if the devil was turning back time for the whole world or only for them. Ein told him that it was impossible to turn back time for the whole world, no matter how powerful Urgoth was, as it would violate all the known laws of metaphysics. She suspected that Urgoth had created a bubble just for Sharenian and noted that the halo which had appeared around the sun indicated that 2 regions of space-time had fallen out of sync. Ryan suggested that they simply leave, but Ein told them that Urgoth's curse kept them trapped in Sharenian, and that Urgoth would continue growing stronger if they had left him alone. Ed and Hardin suggested that someone from the outside could enter, or that Urgoth's strength might eventually fail. Ein then wondered whether they were instead merely trapped in an illusion that made it appear as if they were in a time loop. Hardin told them that they shouldn't doubt their own eyes, as otherwise they wouldn't trust anything, including each other. The knights continued fighting Urgoth over and over again, and though Kalad had reassured him that nothing lasted forever, including the time loop, he and his knights felt more uncertain than reassured. As they continued fighting, some of the knights began feeling uneasy about how many times they had to watch the people of the palace die, all the while being unable to save them even once. The countless waves of devils kept them from resting, adding to their mental fatigue, with the exception of Keeg. As they grew more frustrated, the knights began fighting amongst themselves. Soon after, Hardin heard someone screaming, though no one else heard anything. Keeg suspected that they were suffering from sleep deprivation, which was causing hallucinations. One by one, all the knights, including Kalad, fell prey to these hallucinations. Kalad then recalled a memory of when he had stopped King Sharen from killing the prince. His memories of the incident were then warped into the prince asking Kalad why he had abandoned them. Over 1,000 days later, the knights had grown sick of fighting and asked if they could try leaving the kingdom. Kalad refused, claiming that they needed to uphold their oath, though Ryan had asked if Kalad expected them to keep fighting forever. As the knights argued amongst themselves, Kalad noticed that they had grown more aggressive in their fighting styles. Kalad himself was being plagued by the nightmares of the prince accusing him of valuing his pride and honor over saving him. Eventually, Hardin accidentally wounded Ed, causing Ein to yell at him that the wounds they inflicted upon each other wouldn't get healed by the time loop. However, Kalad then reminded her that Ed had been wounded several cycles ago. He explained that they had tried to let Ed leave Sharenian on his own, but an invisible barrier had kept him stuck in the palace, after which he had been slowly losing his health over the next several cycles. The knights then continued through the time loop, but after several cycles, Ed stopped moving and finally passed away after a dozen more cycles. With his death, the other knights began to falter and slowly began losing their sanity. Nevertheless, Kalad persisted, desperately clinging onto the promise that he had made to Prince Sharen. After defeating Urgoth once again, Kalad admonished Hardin for his sloppy sword skills. Hardin then began to hear Ed's voice screaming, though Ryan kept insisting that Ed was fine. Upon remembering that Ed had died, Ein wondered if it had been her fault, though Hardin realized that the blame fell on him. Suddenly, Ed appeared out of nowhere and told him that Ryan's loose arrow had killed him. Kalad was shocked that everyone was experiencing a shared hallucination, just as Ed told them that they could still save him, pointing at the rubian in Kalad's hand, which Prince Sharen had given to him once again before dying. Ein begged Kalad to use the rubian to save Ed, but Hardin argued that they should use it to save a little girl whom they watched die from a devil attack. Ryan then suggested that they revive King Sharen, as he was the one who had summoned Urgoth, meaning that he might know how to banish him. Kalad told them that they couldn't use the rubian on anyone, causing Ein to accuse him of wanting to save the prince, whom she claimed he loved more than his own friends. The knights began to turn on their commander, believing that Kalad had forced them to stay in the time loop, not to protect the kingdom, but to save the prince. Soon, even Keeg began to waver, unable to recall what his mission was. With no other choice, Kalad told Keeg that his mission was to eliminate his former comrades. Keeg then began to fight the other knights, resulting in everyone being fatally injured and the rubian shattering before their eyes. Kalad revealed that the rubian was a fake, merely an ordinary gemstone. With his dying breath, Ryan asked about Kalad's mission, as he still believed that Kalad had promised Prince Sharen to return him back to life. Kalad then revealed that his promise had always been to protect Sharenian, and, as part of his pledge, Kalad had been asked to destroy the rubian somewhere all could see in order to prevent another mad king from rising to covet its power. Upon the death of Kalad's knights, Urgoth's curse was broken. After his squad had killed each other, Kalad saw that Prince Sharen, who had been lying dead on the floor moments ago, had gotten up on his own. Sharen asked Kalad if he had ever seen an illusion before, and when Kalad told him that he hadn't, Sharen asked how Kalad could be so sure that he, the prince, wasn't an illusion, or his allies, or perhaps even all of Sharenian. He told Kalad to look up at the sky, where Kalad was surprised to see that the halo around the sun had vanished, indicating that the space-time of Sharenian and the outside world had fallen back in sync. Prince Sharen explained that Urgoth's curse had weakened as the subjects of Sharenian died and revealed that Urgoth's power wasn't to turn back time, but rather to create a false reality to imprison Kalad and his knights, entrapping him in nothing more than a mirror that he had created of the real Sharenian. He told Kalad that time had continued to pass at the same rate in the real world, meaning that it had been centuries since Urgoth had trapped them. In the real world, Sharenian had fallen the very same day that Urgoth had been summoned. Atop the ruins of Sharenian, Urgoth had built a prosperous devil empire, though even that had fallen out of the hands of a band of adventurers, leaving just Urgoth and the false Rubian that he guarded. He explained that King Sharen III had formed a contract with Urgoth to have him protect the Rubian, though Urgoth had betrayed him immediately after being summoned. Kalad then raised his blade at the prince, telling him that he wasn't so foolish as to believe such a lie. Sharen then cited how he had once asked Kalad why everything beautiful faded. He recalled how Kalad explained that just as the beauty of a fluttering petal was because of its fall, so too that the beauty of life stemmed from its brevity. Sharen told Kalad that he had been right, as Sharenian and the lives of its people were beautiful because they had been fated to end. At the prince's words, Kalad fell to his knees and asked what he and his knights had been fighting for over the centuries that they had been trapped. Sharen then reminded Kalad of the promise that he had made to protect Sharenian until the very end, so long as a single soul remained. With Prince Sharenian still alive, Kalad's oath required him to remain bound to serve Sharen, the sole survivor of Sharenian. Prince Sharen then gave Kalad the Rubian and told him that he could use it to revive his comrades. Kalad then escaped the world of illusion, where the real Urgoth was waiting for him. Having fought Urgoth over and over for centuries, Kalad easily killed him and took the Rubian. Soon after, 5 explorers, Mog, Kaliad, Julie, Coleman, and Freya, arrived at the ruins of Sharenian, intent on finding lost treasure. There, Kalad greeted them and told them this story. He then used the Rubian on the explorers and told them to claim their treasure that they had come seeking. The treasure of eternal life. With the power of the Rubian, Kalad fused the explorers' physical bodies with the souls of his comrades. Mog the warrior had fused with Hardin to become Mogadin, the Black Knight. Khalid the magician explorer fused with Ayn to become Kaliad, the Black Mage. Julie, the bowman explorer, fused with Ryan and became Juri, the vicious hunter. Coleman, the thief explorer, fused with Keeg, a robotic arcane construct of Sharenian, and became CQ-57, the rampant cyborg. Freya, the pirate explorer, fused with Ed and became Frayed, the bad brawler. Kalad fused with the fallen body of Urgoth and became Guard Captain Darknell. Darknell and his knights then pledged eternal loyalty to Prince Sharen, who revealed himself as the White Mage in disguise. I am going to read this author's note. As these events are now happening in the present day, the White Mage had already fallen, and so this is actually the Black Mage choosing to appear in the form of the White Mage. Since the White Mage looks pretty similar to Prince Sharen, I'm guessing that he was hoping to subliminally influence Kalad's weakened mental state in order to manipulate him into servitude more easily. Though we don't know at what point he decided to start impersonating Sharen, the fact that the events of Sharenian predate his birth imply that he became aware of the time loop after becoming the Black Mage. He also infused his transcendent powers into the Rubian, as otherwise it really was just a common gem all along. Thank you very much for listening to Episode 2. The next chapter I'm going to be reading will be Part 1, Chapter 3, The White Mage. It should be relatively short. Again, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic day.